sure you make very few mistakes. Okay, that's the key for the G-man. So today we had to do this. Next, finish coordinators. We had to finish coordinators, and then we have to do the full review. Today we start with a full review of sentence corrections. So you were basically preparing everything from the first two lessons, right?
Yes.
Do you? I mean that's a place where we should ask questions. Everything should be basically totally understandable.
Okay.
That's important for us. Okay. So now we're gonna start with coordinators. We're gonna try to finish it as quickly as we can, and then we're gonna go to that lesson from lesson number 1 and 2. So let's start here with coordinators. With verbal. Here we have tense correction, theory, and we've got coordinators. This one. So we were seeing coordinators last time. We saw everything related to fanboys, subordinators, right? It's very important for us to memorize the list of subordinators. And then we go over here. We did last one we did was actually this we were doing coordinators actually. We did number 1, right? Number 2, let's see this one. How do we do this one here? Remember, one of the most important things when you're reading a sentence is to be able to identify the number of clauses that you have inside it.
Okay. Right. So here's the first one is a main clause, right?
It is. Yes.
The third one, after the second comma, is also a main clause, right?
Yes, very good. So you have two main classes, right?
Yeah.
Mauritius was and the English language was. So you have two main classes. That's a good thing for us to notice.
Yes. So I think that the idiom or the put together except an in is not good.
Automatically, I think it's not a problem. I think there's something else. Okay, something else that might be because it could be accepting, except for, or accepting. Accepting is kind of wordy, you could say. So, why would we need the ing instead of the adjective accept or adverb accept, right? But I think there's something much bigger, which is the word here, but, right? Do you need that word or not? Because that's a huge difference between those five.
Okay. Mm, so well, now I can say that accepting could be an answer. Mm,
Okay, but now before that, but that's it. We should focus on but.
okay. Okay.
Split. That's a huge difference. Accept and accept. You're not sure about that though.
Okay. Okay.
We always should go for the things we can manage, we can control, right? Between accepting, accept, you might have something regarding sound, but if you're not sure about the idioms are things that you either know them or you don't. For example, it's a target, target at, target
With that.
to. So if
Yes.
you don't know that, there's no way for us to say, okay, you should just choose another split. So that's how idioms work. Now, here the difference is bad. Bad is a huge difference, especially two things. Meaning wise is totally different, and also the type of word you have in there. What type of word is bad? It's a different word.
But is not bad. It's not like a connector, a coordinator.
It is. It is.
Okay.
Definitely it is.
Yeah. Okay. So it's also a subordinate.
No,
No,
something that is a coordinator, which is a connector. I'm sorry, right?
a connector, yes.
Like fanboy cannot be a subordinator. Those are two different lists.
Okay, so well, it's a connector.
Connector
Um,
coordinator, yes. Fanboy.
yes.
Coordinators are fanboys.
I have to look for the difference with except or
Here, let's see. But when you have a word but, what but is a huge word.
mhm,
So to have bad or not to have it is a huge difference.
okay.
So either these two are correct or the other three are correct, but not both. I mean, bad is not one of those words you could put or not. I mean, you either need it or not. What are the things with bad? There are three theories, three places we've seen with bad. Number one, it definitely is meaning, right? Meaning changes. Bad is a contrast. Bad is a drop dead contrast, right? We know that's a contrast and we use it a lot. Number two, where was the first lesson, or which one was the first lesson in which we saw bad?
Okay, so there was connectors for parallelism.
Parallelism. So bad gives you parallelism, but also we know is a coordinator, a conjunction, right? Joins clauses. So you already started by saying you have two clauses. If you have two main clauses, what do you need?
If I have two main classes, well, a connector.
A connector. That's
Yeah.
it. So bad is a connector. Except a connector?
No.
No. Okay, so because of that, we need bad. Now, conjunctions. Conjunctions overtakes parallelism because, of course, if you have conjunctions, that you're saying you have two clauses, right? So you're making two clauses parallel. That's no, that's okay too. Now, what about meaning? Of course, we need bad because what about the meaning here? What's the story about? Do we need a contrast or not? What do you think?
Yes, we need a contrast
Why?
because that's the nature of the word. That you say something and then you contradict that with another class.
Okay, but why in this story we need a
Okay,
contrast?
because we're talking about um, that the Mauritius, the British colon, um, except for a fraction or a part of that colon, they spoke English for a long time. They, well, they don't speak English in that colon.
Okay, right. So they were colonized for several years, actually, right? A couple of centuries. But they don't speak English. Of course, what one would expect is that they speak English, right? But they
Yes.
don't. So that's why we need a contrast. Except it's not a contrast. Except it's just an isolation of one thing. It's a specific thing. But here we don't have. We have a contrast, a total contrast of two things. So we need but. Okay. So that's a way we choose C or D. Now, between those two, what do we do? Actually, the real, let's say, reason why we would choose one of them is a little difficult to see here. But if you apply all those concepts from the introduction, the 6 steps, it shouldn't be too difficult.
Okay. Mm, okay. So I have to look for the parallelism.
You have to look for the parallelism. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, maybe, right? We've mentioned before that we already did parallelism, right?
Yes. Can I say that is not redundant, but um, how was the other word?
Wording?
Yes, called also wordy, but
Which one?
for the means of no, well, it's okay. It's just more wordy. That yeah, the letter D, accenting for the domain
So which one's your answer?
letter C.
Good, that's it. Okay, why? First and foremost, accepting for and accepting, they look like they have the same meaning. And once they have the same meaning, we can say, okay, because they are the same thing, we have to go with the easier one. You see? With
Yes.
the one that is the most simple. So we go with C. There is no need for us to start complicating things with more words, like with the ing. There you go. C. Okay? So, it's important for you. Base your answers on splits. Okay, splits. Then we go here to subordinators. Now, subordinator, we know those subordinators. When we have a subordinator, we could have a subordinate clause. So that's a conjunction, right? So you can have subordinator, clause number one, comma, clause number two. In this case, this comma is always necessary. Or we can have clause number one, subordinator, clause number two. Sometimes they might place a comma, some other times they won't. It depends on the subordinator, right? Most subordinators don't have a comma in that situation. It doesn't matter though for the GMAT, it doesn't matter. They will never place a comma unnecessarily. Okay, and but basically, in the first case, the subordinate clause is the first one. The second case, the subordinate clause is the second one. You see? Now, why is this important? Because once you subordinate a clause to another, the main clause is the important thing, and the subordinate clause is just a modifier. It's a accessory clause. It's a dependent clause, something that receives less emphasis. So the meaning is not the same as when you link those two clauses with a coordinator like a fanboy. Okay. So let's see here. Let's say, although Joe is tired, he wants to play. I'm going to write Joe is tired, comma, but he wants to play. Let's say so, right? Although Joe is tired, he wants to play, and Joe is tired, but he wants to play. Are those two the same or not? What do you think?
He's tired, but he wants to play. Yeah, the second clause is a subordinator, right?
I'm sorry,
The second clause, the subordinator.
but what is the difference?
Ah, well, the first one, although is acting as a um the subordinator marker, something like that.
Mm-hmm. The
And
subordinator. Okay.
the second one is Bat, who is acting but he wants to play. You start, but he wants to play.
Okay. The meaning. What's the difference in the meaning though
Although you is tired,
between those two sentences?
although you is tired, he wants to play. Okay, it looks similar for me.
Okay, they're similar. Okay, they're similar. That's a good thing because both of them are contrasts, right?
Okay.
But there is a difference, though. An important difference to notice. What? That in the first one, when you say although Joe is tired, that's a subordinate clause. Okay.
Mm,
What is a subordinate clause? In reality, most subordinate clauses, I mean, not all of them, but virtually most of them, right? They are modifiers,
mm,
especially their adverbs. So this although Joe is tired is an adverb for the main verb, which is want. So the important thing in this sentence is he wants to play, no more. That's what matters. And then, although Joey Star is a side information. You see?
okay.
Well, in the other one, you have the two things are important. Joey Star, okay, that's important, but he wants to play. That's important because those two are two main clauses. Okay, so this is crucial. The subordinate clause is an adverb normally, adverb for the main verb of the other clause. All right. Sometimes you will see, though, that subordinate clauses can also have the role of an adjective. Okay, but that's only going to be true for a specialist of subordinators, which are basically the ones that are relative subordinators, right? Relatives. That's why we shouldn't mix those two lists. I mean, we should know that, which, who, those are relatives and also subordinators, right? So things like that, which, who, where, when, those relatives, when they give you a subordinate clause, that subordinate clause could be either an adjective or an adverb. Okay, but most other subordinators that are not relatives, they will only be giving you adverbs. That's the main difference.
Can you repeat that just one more time, please?
Sure. You have two types of words. I mean, you have the whole list of subordinators. Inside that list of subordinators, let's say this is the word of subordinators, right? You have the relatives.
Yes.
By
Mhm.
this time, we know already know relatives are things like that, which, who, all right?
Yes.
Those relatives have two functions. They could be relatives or they could be subordinators.
Hmm.
And there they have the functions. Now, those relatives, when you have a subordinate clause, they could be adjectives or adverbs. So their subordinate clauses could modify verbs or nouns.
The subordinate.
But
Okay.
but so they can behave as adjectives or adverbs. They can modify a noun or they can modify a verb. Okay. However, um, most other subordinators that are not relatives, like although, because, well, if those are not relatives, when they are giving you a subordinate clause, they will only be adverbs, nothing else.
They can only
So
be
when you
okay.
adverbs, right? So when you say although Joey starts as a subordinate clause with although is not a relative, therefore this whole thing is just an adverb. We were sure of that.
So although it's an adverb, but everything is the
Now,
support.
although is not an adverb,
Uh,
although Joe is tired is an adverb. The
okay.
clause, subordinate clause.
Okay. That subordinate clause is an adverb. Okay.
Yes, subordinate clause
Um.
because although it's a subordinator, it's not an adverb, not an adjective.
So,
Different structure.
just to understand, to fully understand, although Joe Star, who is an adverb, it's also a modifier.
Of
Not
course,
yes,
because
right?
modifiers are adjectives and adverbs.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you have two types of modifiers, adjectives and adverbs.
Okay.
So by saying that it's an
Okay.
adverb, it's a modifier.
I got it. So because it's an adverb, it can only modify the verb.
Yes, only the verb. Not he. I mean, we don't care about the relationship between although Joe is tired and he. We don't care
Okay.
about it.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Now they tell you something important here at the bottom. They say some people make the mistake to kind of link, right? Mix. Let's say they mix and confuse the concepts of the subordinator. What is a subordinator and what is a subordinate clause? Those are two different things, right? The subordinator is a word like because, although, that. The subordinate clause is when you have that subordinator, that word, plus a clause, right? Those are two different structures. Well, we mentioned before that was an adverb was a subordinate clause. Okay. Sometimes you will see the subordinator without a clause. When you see the subordinator without a clause, that's not a subordinate clause. That's just a subordinator plus something else. Usually, it will be accompanying a noun modifier. In that case, it will just be doing the same thing the noun modifier is doing, right? So although tired, Joe keeps on playing soccer. Now, although tired is a subordinate clause.
No.
No, why? There's no subject, no verb, right? We have although, which is a subordinator, but in that case, although is not doing much.
Mm.
It's just
Tired.
trying to give you a little bit of meaning,
Tired
nothing else.
is an adjective, right?
Tired is an adjective, very good. So that whole thing is what? Adjective.
An
Although
adjective.
it's not changing the meaning, although it's just accompanying tired, and tired is doing all the work there. So it's an adjective, so this whole thing is modifying Joe, not keeps. Okay, because if it were not an adjective, but it were although plus a clause, that would be an adverb. You see, that would be the difference,
Okay, got it. Yes.
right? So just basically, I mean, not every time you say subordinator, you have a subordinate clause. Those are two different things. Okay, nice. So these are the subordinators we have to um, actually memorize to know off the top of our heads. You have all subordinators here, like 20 something. Yeah, those are the ones we have to memorize. It's very
Oh,
important that we do so. Why?
yeah.
Because there's going to be another list of words that we don't want to memorize, but we kind of have to know them because they are the complement of the subordinators, right? So basically, if we memorize the subordinators, whatever other word that could sound like a subordinator, but it's not in our list, we know that it won't be a subordinator. Okay? For example, words like however, like nevertheless, like rather, instead, right? Some people might confuse them with subordinators because they kind of give you some meaning, right? But they are not. They give you meaning, okay, but they can't join clauses. And that's not one of the functions.
Okay.
So you can say, I love ice cream, comma. However, I won't buy it. I won't buy any. That's wrong. Why? A comma is joining two clauses. That's not enough because however is not joining it. You see? It's different. So in that case, what we need is a semicolon because a semicolon joins clauses and however kind of gives you meaning. So basically, a semicolon, however, would be similar to a comma but. Okay, but for those we need a semicolon because they, however, doesn't join clauses. That doesn't have that power, that ability,
Okay.
right? So in order, I mean, there are tons of words like that. So in order for us to know which ones are real true subordinators, we have to know that list of subordinators.
Mm.
That's the only thing. Okay.
So
So yes,
yeah, just one question. So there's those originators in this table. Those are the only ones. Then
the only ones we need to memorize. So basically, when whatever is not in that list
it's
for
not
us is not a subordinate.
it's not subordinator. Okay.
Okay. Good. So what about number 3 here?
So okay, with is not a subordinator.
With is not a subordinator. Okay, it's not.
Mhm.
It's a preposition.
I think that this sentence tries to make a contrast. Uh,
Okay, good. So that's a big thing.
okay, so I will say that we have to use the letter E.
Okay, why not D though? D also has a contrast.
Despite.
Yep, despite is a contrast, right?
Mm, okay, despite
So
having.
with what you said, it's okay for us to eliminate the first three. That's
Yes.
fine. But then you have those two.
Okay, well, I I eliminate despite because I thought there wasn't in the list
Okay, what's in what list?
of subordinators.
It's not a subordinator, but not only subordinators are contrasts.
Ah, okay.
I mean, you have bad, for example, right? You have prepositions of contrast.
Okay, despite having only one. So we're talking about the world's population, the first one, right? With 5% of the world population. I don't know if I prefer having on accounting. Um, Probably less worry will say having, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so let's see. Analyze them a little further. And what are these? I mean, when you have despite having blah, 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 comma, what is that? Or when you say although accounting for blah, 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 comma, what are those? Those are
It's
modifiers,
a
right?
modifier, yes.
Now, when we talk about modifiers, we quickly have to check what type of modifier are they? Adjective or adverb? We have two words of modifiers. So what are those? Because depending on what they are, we are going to make our match, right? So
Mhm.
what are those? Adjectives or adverbs?
Adverbs, adjective, and
Why?
adverbs. Because there is no verb. Um,
So what are they? Again, adjectives or adverbs? Let's see. And why?
those are adjective.
Okay, why is letter D an adjective?
because there is no verb or having is a verb. I don't think so. Oh
Okay,
well,
so why missing a verb makes it an adjective?
well, in order to be an adverb, no, in order to be yes an adverb, it must have um a noun and a verb, right?
No, 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 no. That's not true.
Oh, okay.
That's we're only applying this theory here. But we're not applying all the theory of modifiers. We've got
I
tons of
see.
adverbs, right? Remember, we have to make them mature with the theory of modifiers. There are tons of adverbs.
Yes.
So
So,
that's only one type of adverb they're telling you. Subordinate clause is one type of adverb.
okay,
Yeah,
so you must modify. It could be noun modifier and verb modifier, right?
right. Noun modifier is an adjective. Verb modifier an adverb. Yes.
So it must be to be an adjective. It will modify a noun.
Right, but if we do that, that's going to be difficult. We don't want to check whether it's an adjective or an adverb because of the meaning. We don't want to do that. We do it because of structure. So quick here, the answer is this. It is an adjective. Why? Because in the lesson of modifiers, one of the most basic things tells you that when you start your sentence with an ing modifier, it's an adjective. Rule, right? If you say going to the park, comma, modifiers, it's an adjective, right? So we did this a lot in modifiers.
Okay.
Just because it is at the beginning, it's going to be an adjective. That's what we have to know. An ing phrase that is at the beginning will be an adjective. This is an ing phrase. Despite it's just trying to give you a little context, but it's not really playing a role. So it's like having the word having only. Having only 5%, blah, 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 and that's an adjective. Because it starts with an ing. You see?
Okay. So
That has to do with basic lessons of modifiers. Same thing for the other one, accounting for. Although it's just a company, it's a sidekick for accounting for. What type of word is accounting? ING, right? What happens when you start your modifier with an ING and it comes before the clause? So when you start your sentence with that ING, it's an adjective.
okay.
So those are adjectives, and we have to know them that way. Okay. Why? Because if you just look at what they're trying to modify, you might get confused.
Okay.
You see?
So they are modifying United States citizens.
Citizens, right? So are both of them correct to modify citizens?
No. Uh,
Which one's wrong and why?
um, letter D is wrong
Letter D is wrong. Why? Very good.
because
Why?
citizens can have.
That's it. There you go. They can represent. Accounting for is representing, but they cannot have. A country can have. There you go. Okay. Nice. So you did good. But we can do that once we know this is an adjective. You see? Because if it were an adverb, then it wouldn't have to agree with citizens. It would just agree with consume. You see? So it wouldn't be a problem. But because it is an adjective, it has to make a match with citizens. And letter D is incorrect. Okay? That's how we do it. What do you think about that?
I have to memorize a lot of stuff.
Or modifiers, study modifiers. We're going to review right now, but modifiers by far the biggest lesson, most
Okay.
important. Okay. Number four. Number four is very easy.
So letter C.
Letter C, very easy, right? Why?
It has a pronoun to refer to the golden crab.
It has to refer to the golden crab, which is an eat, cannot be a they, right? So those are out. So what happens with A and what happens with D? Why don't you like them? What do you have
Mm,
against them?
On account of living, well, for a start, I found it very worthy, and
Yes,
also
imprecise, right? It's not precise because you say on account of living, who lives? We don't know. The other one is precise. It lives. The
okay,
crab lives. So that's
living
out.
is a simple gerund, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have seen fine. What about number five?
Uh, Rod had an answer question about yeah, because of his verb modifier, right?
Because plus a clause or because of plus a noun, those are verb modifiers.
And because
So
of
here,
just because of is similar to due to. I had that
no,
question before. Okay.
no, we've had that theory right before. You want
Ye-
to see that again? There's a
okay.
big difference there. Okay.
Just because I was talking with someone this weekend, I heard that because of is similar to due to. You
They're
can
different.
replace with two. Okay. I
In
know that.
everyday language, in everyday language, they're the same, right? But for the GMAT, you have to know that the GMAT uses tricky and deceitful theory for verbal. So now, this one. Do you remember anything about this? So
Yes.
because, right? What was the difference between because of and due to? For
Uh,
example, if I say,
because it's verb is modifying the verb, and due to is modifying the noun.
right, that's a difference. For the GMAT, that's a difference. Now, if you're gonna speak, that's fine. Both of them are the same. The
Okay.
GMAT is very picky with its theories. So while we're studying here grammar and sense correction, even for writing, it's not gonna help you for
Okay.
because the GMAT is very, let's say, unrealistic with sense correction.
Okay.
Right? That's why sense correction is getting removed. Right? It's
It's
getting
gonna
removed.
remove next year.
Yep. For the focus edition, it's getting removed.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
The Chinese were just pushing for that. The Chinese were pushing for that, and the Indians also. Not the Indians not so much. Chinese more. They hate
Okay.
sense correction.
I hate sense correction. Okay.
Geometry is also getting removed.
Oh. Hmm. So it's gonna be easier then.
Yeah, it's really far easier. They're going to include IR, just like the executive assessment. IR
Okay.
is going to be part of the whole grade.
Okay. Well. So yeah, I got it now.
So that one's the answer C. Clean. What about this one, number five?
Okay. So mm, me- mm, the first class is a modifier, right? But it's not a subordinate class.
The first clause is a modifier. A clause can only be a modifier if it's a subordinate clause. Main clauses are non modifiers.
Okay.
So the first part is a prepositional phrase. During Roosevelt, that's a prepositional phrase. During is a preposition,
ING.
even though it ends with ing.
Okay.
right? One might think it's a gerund or an ing. It's not a real ing. It's a preposition.
Okay.
It's
So
a very deceitful.
it's not an adjective.
It's not an adjective. I mean, it's a an adverb because it's a preposition actually here, right? Black Americans began voting. It's not
Voting.
a problem though because this one is not underlined, right? That first one is a main clause.
Okay. So
So you
I
have but and you have another main clause.
okay. So there is a split. Mm, eh,
Develop and develop. So that's an easy one, right? Tense.
yeah. Yeah. Also because develop only after is in letter D. There is no after. There's a but there is no after develop.
There's no after development. Okay,
Oh
that's
well,
good.
only
So
after.
that, yeah, you're right. That's how.
Yes. Okay. So time. But we're talking about Roosevelt time. So we're talking about the past.
Hmm.
So well, all of those are talking are in past tense. Was supported when support in letter C after support of civil rights legislation. That's in present, right? Oh well, no. Truman support is a noun. After noun support. After can I eliminate letter E because it has a being and it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, because there are four, of course, the one with the being is most likely not going to be the answer. We could say, and it has a there also. It has two things that are very ugly. Okay.
Okay. Um, develop only after civil rights. So letter C it changed the meaning because it changed the noun when civil rights legislations
What
af-
now? What do you mean now?
after when civil rights
Support? The support?
yes
Okay. Does it change the meaning bad? I mean, you sure it changes the meaning?
only after when civil rights legislation was supported by
There's a problem with the first two. Why? With this when? After when is an idiomatic, right? Because when
mm,
you say after, you want to say a time, which is after six, after an event, right? But not when, because when also wants to specify time, so it's basically redundancy between after and when. After is telling you later, when is telling you at that time. You see?
okay yeah
So those two don't agree. So you have to change the meaning. There might be a slight change in meaning, might be okay, but grammar and logic are more important than original meaning. So that case, see. Okay, perfect. So now we go to number six. Let's see.
Mm, mm, so unlike is a non-modifier.
Like it's not a modifier, which I mean, we shouldn't. It could be a modifier, but we shouldn't see it as a modifier. We have a totally different theory for things like unlike that we
Yeah,
just saw before. In which lesson did we tackle unlike?
I think was mm, comparisons.
Yes. So comparisons are different than modifiers.
Okay.
In reality, they are modifiers, but let's say they're modifiers with a special thing. So we don't. I mean, for us, it's different, right? Unlike, they have their own theories. What is the theory for unlike and all those comparisons?
Mm, okay. So like, and we use like to compare nouns.
Yes, we use like and unlike to compare nouns. Exactly. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm, okay, so if I have to eliminate the letter E, so in letter E we're talking about a comparison between transplant and the patients, right?
Comparisons between the transplant and the patients.
So I don't know if that's correct. Maybe
Do you think that's correct or not?
like transplant. No, I don't think it is correct.
That's wrong, right? Very good. So that's A, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now what else? Because yeah, that's a logical comparison.
Besides
What?
transplant, no. Besides is also a comparison.
Okay, those are the words that are similar to like and unlike, right? What are those words that are similar or they say have the same theory as like and unlike?
Mm,
Besides, unless, aside from, other than, any of them?
yeah, yeah, right. Like and like, more or less, aside from resemble. In con-
Aside from, okay,
yes.
resemble, but not all of them are. Not all of them. So resemble doesn't have the theory of like. More or less than they don't have the theory of like and like. I mean, those are what you're saying right now are the comparison markers. That's fine. But which of those comparison markers have the same theory as like and unlike? Aside from, what else?
No.
In contrast to,
Different from. No.
different from, other than, similar to, then we have what else?
Besides.
Besides.
Yes.
So we know that besides has the same theory. Is besides correct or not? What do you think?
Is besides correct?
In that case, how do you review that
Transplant.
one?
No, it's not correct.
The same thing as A, right? Same
Yes.
problem. Good. What about aside from?
Yeah. Yes.
What do you mean, yes?
Yeah, is a sign from transplant
The same
between
problem, right? What about
yes,
unless?
the transplant. Yes, it's the same problem.
The same problem. What about other than?
Mm,
The same. Okay.
it's like
Then,
everything
so
is wrong.
what's the trick here? What's the trap? That unless it's not a comparison marker, unless it's a what?
Unless,
Subordinator. That's why you have to know your list of subordinators. Subordinators are not comparison markers. Therefore, with unless you don't apply the theory. With unless you only have to have clause number one and clause number two. That's it. Okay. So here they're testing your ability to know your lists. You see? Very tricky. Okay.
okay,
Okay. Let's do this one. Give me 1 second, please, Josue. We'll do this one.
okay. Even though clubs points.
Okay, so what about this one?
Well, it start with a subordinator.
Mm-hmm. Starts with a subordinator.
Yeah.
Right.
So a contra subordinator.
Yes.
Um. So we're trying to make contrast within spear points with faces have been followed by narrator. So they're trying to contrast that besides it was found in a place, the name
Mm-hmm.
it's um, it come from uh, another place, a different one.
Okay, that's not a that sounds good, right? Sounds like something that would make sense.
Yes.
What do you think about that? Sounds like something that it would be reasonable. Let's say, right? Okay, let's continue. Let's go on.
Okay, other name for New Mexico. Letter two sounds weird to me, but I don't know if it's because
Letter what?
letter B. So
All right. Why does it sound weird to you?
it have the subordinator, although named for the Mexico side. Then they talk about Clavis points are spear point of the Indian groups. So there is no more than one. There is just two sentences.
There
Um,
is just okay. That's fine then. That's fine.
okay.
What would the problem be then? Is there a problem, or you just want to leave it on standby for the time being?
I don't know. I think that it's wrong, but okay.
Okay, that's good. It's a good feeling. That's good, and that's important. All right. But let's see the other ones.
Okay. Mm, even though. Okay, so next one is named for the New Mexico side where they have been first discovered. So I, I don't remember the type of sentence this is, but I remember that has to be like this is like a passive voice type of thing. Naming for New
I
Mexico
think
side.
they're missing something huge though. Between the first two and the third one,
And there is
there's a
no
huge
there is no
difference.
subordinate there is no subordinator.
Yeah, but especially, I mean, not only subordinator. The fact is that there is not a contrast.
Ah, okay, okay.
Because I mean, you could do away without a subordinator because here you don't have two sentences, right? But the fact that you are missing the contrast is, I think, different, very different. So, do you need a contrast or not?
Uh, speed points in chance if you haven't followed. No, I don't think so. Do you need a contrast?
You don't need a contrast. So,
Hmm.
if you don't need a contrast, you have to eliminate the first two.
Okay. Name for New Mexico side where they have been first discovered. Spear point were achieved under the faces, having followed or North America. But I have to have a contrast.
Do you have to have a contrast? Do you think so or not? Is
Mm,
it? Let's put it this way, because the contrast is in the original one, right? Is it wrong to have a contrast or not? What do you think?
no, it's not wrong.
It's not wrong. Okay, so then you leave it. That's
Okay.
it. So this one will be changing in a minute. You see?
Okay. Got it. Spear points. Okay, so letter D is also changing the meaning. Uh, Letter E have a subordinate.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So letter this one has a subordinator. That's right.
Color sponsors. No, because there is a day who maybe got ambiguous.
Okay, they could be ambiguous. While is always kind of a non-preferred contrast. While is kind of ambiguous itself. If you want to put a contrast with while, it's kind of difficult because it could be a contrast, but it could also be at the same time. So here, if you truly need a contrast, then while is kind of weak. Okay,
Okay.
and if it's got nothing better to offer than A and B, then the E is out. What about letter D?
Speed points. Letter D.
Yes, that's the only one we're missing.
Okay, yeah, I said that we have to eliminate it, that too, because there is no comparison.
Oh, very good. That's good. So that's out. So
Yes.
between A and B, you say A is better than B, and it is. Okay. Why? Because they're changing the meaning with B. They're changing the main clause. If you notice, the main clause in letter A is what? What's the main clause in the first one?
Spear points with longitudinal groove chip onto their faces.
Yep. And what about having found? Actually, is a subordinate clause, right? And then they're named for. That's the actual main clause, right? They are named. That's the main clause. You
Okay.
okay with that? And what about letter B? There are spear points. Okay. So that's the main clause. Different main clauses. So if you have different main clauses, do you have different sentences? Yes, because you're focusing the importance of the sentence on different places. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Okay, so there you go between those. Now we go to punctuation. Punctuation is kind of easy. Okay, here we're going to see the comma, semicolon, not the colon and dash. We're going to see that in the advanced section. Now, when you have a comma, you have four possible functions for a comma. Okay. Function number one is for lists, right? Whenever you have a list of more than two items, then you're going to have to go A, comma, B, comma, answer. So you have to separate them with commas, right? That's what the comma is for. That's the first function.
Okay.
So we all know that. Easy. Number two, to isolate non-essential modifiers, right? So if you have a modifier that is not important, then you want to say that it doesn't help you determine the noun or whatever that is in there, maybe a verb, right? Whatever it's modifying, then you isolate it within commas. So you isolate a non-essential modifier. That's the second function. Third function, it's to help a conjunction do its work, right? So for example, if you are going to add a fanboy, you say comma and. So that comma helps you know that that and is working as a fanboy or working as a coordinator, right? Sometimes when you have subordinators also, you have subordinator clause number one, comma clause number two. So that comma is helping the subordinator join the clauses.
Okay.
So it's helping. And number four is the weirdest, okay? Is if you have two adjectives. A list of two adjectives, you can use a simple comma to separate them. Can you read this one for me, please? This one here, this one. Can you read that one for me?
She's a smart, studious woman.
Is there anything that you believe that is odd, or you it's fine for you?
Mm, it's fine, but it could be that they are like factorizing. She's a smart. Could be a connector like an ant.
Right. Normally, you have to list. You have a list here. Normally, you would go smart and studious because those are two adjectives. Okay, that's a list of two adjectives. Usually, when you have a list of two, you have an and. But because those are two adjectives, you also have the choice to just change that and for a comma. Okay, only when you have adjectives. So that's a very uncommon situation. Okay, so if you have two adjectives, instead of placing a and, you can place a comma.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes, but it's if only they are modifying the same noun.
Right, two adjectives modify the same noun. It's a list of adjectives. So when you have a list of adjectives, they will always be modifying the same noun.
Okay.
Okay. Now, semicolon. What is semicolon? We already know the main function of a semicolon. What is it? What is the main rule?
Semicolon to separate two main classes.
Right, separates two main classes, right? You have a semicolon, main class on the left, main class on the right. Right. Very uncommonly, there will be another function for the semicolon, okay? To separate lists that themselves contain commas. So to make a list of lists. So let's say if you have A, comma, B, comma, and C, right? You have a list of three things. But inside A, you have a list and commas. Inside B, you have a list and commas. So in order to separate those elements, you have to place semicolons. So if the elements within the list themselves contain more lists, then you have to separate them with semicolons.
Okay.
Okay. Example, can you read this one for me, please? And that almost never happens. Almost never, but that's just a very minor part. Let's see.
He enjoys different fruits. Citric fruits such as oranges, kiwi, and mandarins. Sour ones such as camu camu and golden berries. And sweet ones such as an apple and chirimoya.
Very good. So what do you think we're using?
Semicolon.
Semicolons.
So where there's a list of citric fruits
Yep.
and then a list of there's a list of fruits and then
Mhm.
a list of that type or those type of fruits.
Right. So you have list of lists, basically,
Yes.
and that's why you have to separate them with semicolons. Yeah. Okay. So those are the things with punctuation. Punctuation is not such a big deal. Just remember that if you have two main clauses and you have only one comma to separate them, that's always going to be wrong. Okay. So that's what that I think that's the most common mistake. So now let's go here, number 8. This one's a little tricky. Pay close attention here to modifiers. That's it.